through the silly season of Christmas, I think it was probably quite easy to forget that Norwich City's AGM was this week, and Mark Attanasio was there, and it was also really interesting to see Richard Ressler fly over. They were over for pretty much 48 hours, if that. It was Mark Attanasio, Mike Attanasio, Richard Ressler. They flew in, they had the sponsors' dinner, they had a board meeting, they had the Christmas staff dinner, so plenty of wine and plenty of turkey by the sounds of it, and of course Norwich City's AGM. Now, Mark Attanasio made a joke that in the summer when he did the fans forum, he was greeted with USA, USA. Slightly different this time around, slightly more muted reception, but I'm sure that Norwich City and their hierarchy were very glad that they won on Saturday, because it would have been hellish in there if it wasn't for that. New manager, Philippe Clement, new ideas in terms of how we go about things, but still the same headlines come out from Mark Attanasio. Premier League success and an establishment in the Premier League is still very much the goal, and they still think it's possible. There were some really interesting quotes, and I think it's probably worth starting this off by saying I am continually impressed by our owners. And yes, they're not perfect, and yes, they're naive in certain aspects to the English game, but what they do have is care, loyalty, and very deep pockets. But actually, I think the first two bits of that are just as important, because how often have we seen American owners, and not just American owners, but foreign owners, come over with vast amounts of money and still get it wrong? We have had such a gear shift over the last few years from Delia Smith and Michael Wynne-Jones, who, by their own admission, were left behind in terms of the finances of the beautiful game. And they couldn't compete in the ways that Mark Attanasio can compete in terms of financial power. But what they did have was a fierce loyalty and a real love for Norwich City. And it was important that we found the right replacement for the two of them. And I think we have in Norfolk Holdings Group. There was some interesting quotes. I think I'll pull this one up first. It was from Mark Attanasio. He was asked about Liam Manning, where it went wrong, what they could have done differently. And Attanasio said, what it does bring is more urgency to our decision making. I know there was previous questions, why did we not change the coach quicker when every goal you concede counts? I'm someone who likes as much data as possible before making a call. Why did it take so long? The last few games of the Manning era were on me, I guess I could say. If Philippe had been available in the summer, then it may have been different, or a coach like him. He didn't just want to come in here and fix this year. He wants to be here for a number of years. And I'm glad that came out in terms of what Mark has said there, because I thought I was driving myself crazy by the end of the Liam Manning era. We could see it unravelling. We could see it unfolding. And it wasn't a pretty picture. And we could also see us tumbling towards League One. And look, that may still happen. We're still 4 points adrift. We're still in the relegation zone. The gap between us and safety is still the same. But we have hope now, and we have a style of football that at least is slightly more pleasant on the eye and slightly more effective as well. I think the naivety towards the English game can't be overlooked, and I think that Mark and Richard Ressler, and I'm sure the wider team of his kind of group, will admit that there was probably a bit more patience than you can get away with in English football, and you're constantly balancing between not chopping and changing too regularly and trusting a process. I'm fully behind that. But when you can see something is so clearly not working and not going in the right direction, then you have to pull the trigger quickly, because relegation is a thing. Relegation is a very real thing. It's not in the States. And I think the not only the staff situation, but the player situation has been interesting, because Mark said, well, if there's a player on a 6-year contract at Milwaukee Brewers, they can kick and scream all they like, but they're not going anywhere. Again, very different here. It's player power orientated here. If Borja Sainz says he wants to go, Borja Sainz will probably end up going, much like he did. The same with Gabi Sarra, the same with Johnny Rowe, the same with Adam Eder. The list goes on. So you have to balance that really carefully, and you have to balance the real fine line between patience and changing before it's too late. And I think that will have been a very hard lesson for Mark Attanasio. But when Ben Napper comes to you and goes, look, hold my hands up, I've got this one wrong, it's not working, we have to make a change, Mark listened, and Liam Manning was fired. There was also a lot of questioning around the recruitment as well. I think there's 26 players that Ben Napper has signed in the last couple of years since he came in and took the full reins as sporting director. I'll leave you in the comments and let me know which ones of those you think have worked and have kind of hit the ground running so far and present good value for money. Richard Ressler said that data gives you the information to make decisions. Ben Napper has said to us that we're in the business of recruiting younger, high upside value players that might cost us less in the first instance. But that comes with risk as well as reward. It is ultimately the people who have to make the decisions, good and bad. Myself and Mark have expectations, and the outcomes this season have been very bad. Very, very bad. But we have confidence in the processes in place. We haven't got it right yet. Now that I found fascinating. Because if I were Ben Napper up on that stage and one of my bosses, Richard Ressler, is going, we've got the information, we've got the data, but it's how we interpret it. And actually, the outcomes of those interpretations have been very bad. I don't think that would put me in a particularly comfortable position. Now, I don't think what Richard Ressler is saying there that the players they've signed are necessarily bad, but the outcomes of the recruitment in general have been shocking. That's clear to see. £70+ million spent since the arrival of Norfolk Holdings Group. Norwich City sit 23rd in the Championship, 4 points adrift. We have one of the highest wage bills in the division. We have one of the most valuable squads in the division. And at the moment, only financially ruined Sheffield Wednesday are below us in the division. That's tough to take. And that will be tough to take for Mark Attanasio and Richard Ressler, two incredibly intelligent guys, where their reputation's on the line. When they go out on a jolly on the golf course with the Liverpool owners and the Villa owners and the Chelsea owners, and they're having a knock around. Oh, how's the Champions League this year? Oh, how's winning the Premier League this year? Oh, Mark, how's League One this year? That is a question that they won't want to be answering. And their opinion is that relegation is still not an option. We shall see about that. But what it does give me hope in is that they will invest in January, and I think that's undoubted. What we do have to realise is this is a pretty bloated squad already. You would, not for financial reasons, but assume that you'll have to let some players go in order to just free up some space. You've got probably 6 or 7 injuries that will come back and be competing for first team football. I think when you list off like, oh, there's 12, 13 players injured, that's a slight nonsense because a few of those won't get anywhere close to the first team, but most of them will. So you have that as well. And I think there is a genuine belief now that they've made bad decisions and they've got decisions wrong, but with Philippe Clement, there is a real belief that he is the man to turn it around. He was on the shortlists for Premier League teams. He wasn't available in the summer due to the hip surgery he was undergoing, so he probably wasn't available for Norwich City to look at then. But there is a belief that under Clement, he can get this group of players sound. And we've already started to see that. 4 points in a week at Carrow Road. Granted, it was against Oxford and QPR, but it's a far better output than we've seen so far this season. So one would hope that will change. And everyone I speak to that isn't a Norwich City fan, and it's a slightly dangerous viewpoint, but I do get where they're coming from because I have the exact same opinion about Sheffield United. I just look at Sheffield United and go, they'll be fine. They've got too much quality. They'll put a run together and pull away. The likes of Swansea, Portsmouth, I was going to say Blackburn, but actually they're doing okay recently. They're the teams that maybe people are more worried about. I think that's a dangerous viewpoint, and I think that creeps into a slight degree of complacency, and I don't want Norwich to get in that situation. No one is too good to get relegated from the Championship, and once you are relegated from the Championship, much like when you're relegated from the Premier League, if you don't bounce back straight away, you're there for a long, long while. Ask Sunderland, ask Ipswich, ask Portsmouth, big clubs who've been stuck in the third tier of English football for a very long while. But in that half an hour or so interview conducted by Darren Eadie, and it was a sort of fan Q&A as well, I did once again leave thinking, I like these guys. I think they're in it for the long run. Richard Ressler said, we came in here with the intention of giving this a decade. We will give this a decade to try and get us into the Premier League and an established Premier League club through good recruitment, through good use of data, through good player trading, through good staff recruitments, through significant financial investment, through stadium redevelopment plans. This is a mammoth task for anyone. But what they do have, as I said at the top of this video, they have care, they have love, they have appreciation for this fan base. And I do genuinely believe they will invest significant money. So, we need to get through this season, first of all. I think it's clear that promotion is certainly off the cards. We just need to survive at this stage. And then hopefully in the summer there will be changes, I think. And then we will start to kick on. That is the hope. That is the dream. That is the expectation at this stage. We shall see if that becomes the reality. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.